Hey, I've gotten quite a few questions um, from y'all about the graphing calculator and working with the viewing window. So I've pulled up a few questions here from the homework, and I just wanted to go through a couple of examples with graphing and setting the viewing window. So this is a question from homework number 1, and you can go back into homework number 1 and pull up those questions from your grade book. If you click on your grade book in MyLabs Plus, next to your grade, there's an option to review your homework. And you can rework problems. It won't change your grade, but it'll let you rework problems, like to help study for the test if you want to. So this is problem number 28 in homework number 1, and it asks you to graph a function in a specific window. So these 4 numbers here inside those brackets, they're the x minimum, x maximum, y minimum, and y maximum. So it gives us the function, and it gives us those ranges in the x direction and the y direction. I'm going to show you how to type it into the calculator and see what it gives us. So I've got a graphing calculator here over on my computer. First I'm going to type in the function. So I'm going to go to y equals, and our function is negative x cubed plus 6x squared. So negative x cubed plus 6x squared minus 9x minus 5. And because they want us to look at it in a certain window, and they're telling us that specific window so that we can see increasing and decreasing intervals. If we look at it in just the standard window, we might not see everything that we're supposed to see. So once I get my function entered in, if they tell us a window and they don't actually spell out x min, x max, y min, y max, and they just give us those 4 numbers, they will always be in that order. The first number will be the x minimum, the second number will be the x maximum, that third number will be the y minimum, and the fourth number will be the y maximum. So I'm going to go back here to my calculator, and I'm going to click on window. So x minimum, they said they want to be -3. And then I'm going to click either the enter or the down arrow. And x maximum, they want to be 7. The x scale really doesn't matter. All that's going to do is change the number of tick marks that get displayed on your x-axis. And that's not going to change what the actual graph of the function looks like. Y minimum, they want to be -20. And y maximum, they want to be 15. And again, y scale doesn't matter. Just change the number of tick marks that get displayed on the y-axis, and it's not going to change what your function looks like. So now that I have adjusted the window on my own, I just hit the graph button to see what the graph looks like. Now, the difference between the graph button and the zoom button is under the zoom button, there are a bunch of preset windows. So there is zoom decimal, zoom square, zoom standard, zoom trig, zoom integer, zoom stat, and there's some more. So those are all a bunch of preset windows. But if you're going to pick your own window settings, then you will type them in, and then you will just hit graph. So they've decided ahead of time that in order to see all of the increasing and decreasing intervals adequately, that we should use these window settings. So now when we hit graph, we can see everything nicely. And the question here are the increasing and decreasing intervals, and I've noticed this also on the looking through people's homework, that people are having trouble with the interval notation. When you use interval notation and you write your answers, you should only be using the x values. These are not ordered pairs with x's and y's. We only care about the x value where the behavior starts and the x value where the behavior ends. So if we start on the left side of this graph, the x value on the left side of this graph is negative infinity. So as far left as I could possibly go is negative infinity. And when I start following this graph, I'm going down, which means it's decreasing. So from negative infinity until right here, which is an x value of 1, this graph is decreasing. And then it looks like it turns around and starts going up. So from 1 to 3, it's increasing. And then at 3, it starts going back down again. So from 3 until the right-hand side of the graph, which is positive infinity, it's decreasing again. So even though it goes down to the bottom of the graph, it's still considered positive infinity because we're worried about the x values on the graph. So the left-hand side of the graph is negative infinity. The right-hand side of the graph is positive infinity because when we do interval notation, we're only worried about the x values. So I would say this graph is decreasing from negative infinity until 1. It's increasing from 1 to 3, and then it's decreasing again from 3 to infinity. Another question that's being asked here, let me answer these questions. So the interval where it's increasing was from 1 to 3. Oops, sorry, let me answer this. 1 to 3, awesome. And decreasing was negative infinity to 1 and 3 to infinity. And relative maxima. So maximums and minimums refer to how high and how low the graph goes. So how high is dictated by the y-axis. And they want you to split it up into 2 pieces. So how high it goes, sometimes it's hard to see. So you could always ask the calculator to figure that out for you if you go to calc. And if you see on this calculator specifically, it's in blue above the trace function. So if you need the calculator to help you out with that, you can go to second trace, which is the calc, and option number 4 says find the maximum. So I can choose option number 4. Now it wants me to locate a little area where I think it is, because it's possible that our graph has several maximums on it and it can only find one at a time. So it wants me to tell it an area that's to the left of where I think it is. And the best way to do that is to actually find where you think it is. So if I think this is the maximum, to find a left bound, just hit the left button a couple times, and that will be my left bound. And for a right bound, go to the right of it. And then for a guess, just go back to where about you think it is. So the actual maximum, ignore the decimals because we'll always have nice whole numbers here. The actual maximum value is the y value, because a maximum or a minimum is how high or how low, which is a vertical value. So that's going to be the y value. So when they ask me a relative maximum, it's going to be the y portion of it, which is -5. And it's at x equals 3. And then they've got one more question here, and it asks about the minimum. And we could repeat that exact same process, and we could ask the calculator to do it for us. And under second trace, which is the calc option, option number 3 is minimum. Again, we have to have an idea of what we're doing to begin with, because we have to give the calculator an area to look in. And it looks like this is a relative minimum over here. It's always going to be like the bottom of a little valley. And we have to give the calculator that area to look in. So I'm going to scroll over to where I think it's going to be. So it looks like it's about right there. And then the calculator wants a left bound, so I'm going to hit the left arrow a couple times so I know I'm to the left of it and hit enter. And then it wants a right bound, so hit right a few times and hit enter. And then a guess, so go back to the middle of them and hit enter. And that x value, 0.999999, that's actually 1. And hopefully your calculator doesn't do any crazy stuff like that. Most of the time they don't. But the y value is -9, and the actual maximum or minimum is the y value, because it's the maximum or minimum is how high or how low the graph goes, and the x is just the location of it. So the minimum is -9, and it's located at x value of 1. So there's one more of these I want to do because I know it's going to come up on your test, and I've seen a lot of people get it wrong. And it's this problem with the temperature. What makes this one a little bit more difficult is they ask you to graph it, and they give you several different windows to graph it in. These numbers underneath the graphs are different windows, and there's 2 different windows. All of the Y windows are exactly the same, 98 to 103, but there's 2 different X ranges to look in, either 0 to 6 or 0 to 3. So they give you this function, and notice after the function it says 0 to 6. So automatically you know it is not going to be 0 to 3, 0 to 3, because it specifically says in the problem 0 to 6. So it has to be B or C. The problem says 0 to 6. So it has to be 0 to 6, 0 to 6. It's either going to be B or C. So I'm going to go back here to my calculator, and I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to clear this one out. And I'm going to type in this new function, which is -0.2. Now we don't have a t button on our calculator, we just have x. So I'm going to pretend this everything is in terms of x. So we got -0.2 x squared plus 1.2 x plus 98.6. And it says x, we're pretending t is x, should be from 0 to 6. So under my window, I'm going to let x go from 0 to 6. We don't care how many tick marks they're going to show, so don't worry about the scale. And all of the options we're given for graphs down here, the y is 98 to 103. So on my y, I'm going to do 98 to 103. And again, I could care less how many tick marks they're going to show. And since I am defining my own window settings, I'm just going to hit graph. And we're going to match that up with a graph over here. And for some reason, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, it stopped graphing. Well, it didn't down here. I might just have to reload it, sorry. Yeah, for some reason my calculator stopped working, but we can definitely see that it goes up to 1, 2, in between the second and the third tick mark. So it's going to be option B. It's definitely from 0 to 6 because the problem says that. And this one goes between second and third tick mark. And then use the maximum feature to determine the patient's maximum temperature. So we know how to do maximum now. We just go second calc, and I'm sorry, this I'm gonna have to restart this, I think. This stopped working, but just follow the same directions as for the last one. If we go to second calc and choose option 4 for maximum, it looks like the maximum is right about here at x equals 3. So if we choose a value to the left and value to the right, it will give us an answer back right around 3 for the output, or excuse me, for the input at 3 days, and it will give us